Hi,
Hey Nancy,
how's it going? There's nobody here yet.
are you expecting a lot of people?
No,
Okay.
I'm glad I put it out there because I feel like a lot of people tell me I don't want to do Zoom. I don't want to do Zoom. So I really wanted to give people the chance.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I hear you. I thought it was a good thing.
Yeah,
Um,
well, we'll see.
yeah. How's everything else going?
Busy, good.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Are we gonna get a quorum? Is everyone
I
coming?
think so. I think so. Zach and then Becca said she could come, but she was going to have to be in charge of the kids,
Yeah,
so
no
she didn't think
worries.
she could
Yeah, I don't
chair
mind.
it.
Everything seems pretty easy on the agenda. We could probably get through it pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just the permit thing, but we'll yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hi, John. You're
Mm.
muted, just so you know. You're muted.
What's that?
There he
Good.
is.
How you doing, John?
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good.
Kind of an odd time for a meeting.
Six
I,
thirty. When's your ideal time?
I don't think there is an ideal time. It's just 6:30. It's usually 7 o'clock, or they're usually 8:30 in the morning, or some weird thing.
Yeah, yeah.
They're just a little bit weird, but all right. Got a cup of coffee, and seems like a pretty straightforward agenda.
Nice. Yeah, if I had coffee now, I'd probably be up all night.
I don't know. I swear to God, it used to keep me up, but now I can drink coffee until like I used to like. If I had coffee after 4 o'clock, I was done. I couldn't close my eyes at night. But caffeine just doesn't seem to do it for me anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Nancy, is there a way to see comments on this? Like, do people comment for questions, or do we normally just do it over?
let's see, chat. Yep, there is a chat. I don't know how
Oh,
to
I see
disable
it down
it,
there.
so I'm
Yeah,
not
okay.
going to.
Yeah. Well, if anybody wants to talk, they can
Yep,
chat there.
Are you expecting a new? Are you down at the shack, Nancy? Is that right?
I am, and it looks like the one person who RSVP'd is coming. That's awesome.
Oh,
I forgot
good.
my speaker. I have one at home, like a personal speaker, and I forgot it. So I'll put this here. And I'm just going to turn the heat on. Hello. How's it going? Good. I just turned the heat on, and then I thought we'd keep the door open. You might be the only one.
Whoa.
You're the only one who RSVP'd.
Really?
Yep. So
Everybody hates it.
I'll introduce you though. You want to come over? This is Rocky, Eric Rigo.
Hello.
He
Hi.
primarily does wild quahogs, and he's lobsters and scallops on a couple boats out of Pete Town as well.
Cool. How's it going?
Good. How you
This
guys
is
doing?
Jake Puffer. He's chairing tonight.
Uh-huh.
This is John Dwayne. He's also on the committee. And then John Real is attending, probably because of the harbor management plan. Let me let these other people in, admit all.
Nice to meet you guys.
Hi there.
Hey, John, it's Tom.
Hey, Tom.
Tom's also on the committee.
Hey, Nance.
Hi, Tom.
Hey, Tom, how's it going?
Hey,
I'm just gonna go.
Jake, how are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Just look at it.
Oh, I got you.
So I guess we're just waiting for a few more people and then we can get started.
Just me and Nancy down here all by ourselves.
Only two showed up, Nancy and you.
Just me.
Somebody just disappeared. Oh, that's me.
No, I still see you, John.
Yeah, but my pop-up window came up and blocked everybody. It's all right.
I just printed out an agenda. Let's see, 1, 2, 3.
What do we need for a quorum? 5?
Four.
4.
Or
I think we need four. We need Zach or Rebecca.
Okay. Yeah, when one of them shows up, we'll just get right
It's gonna
started.
suck. It's gonna be hard
Yeah.
to hear because I forgot my speaker.
Those Bluetooth speakers.
Oh, waiting room. Hold on. Everybody's in the waiting room. I stepped away to
Okay.
print and I think we have a quorum.
Oh, great. Becca?
Hi. Just see if we go down here, if it'll be easier to hear. Maybe a little bit.
Got a little seat.
Yeah, I won't sit, but that's
I see
All right,
Zach
well-
down there.
It's 6:32. We'll get this meeting going. Zach, are you doing the minutes tonight? Is Zach on yet?
I
He's
see him
on, but
down
he's
there.
muted.
Okay. Just give Zach another.
Look at that.
Oh, there he is.
He's
I'm here.
having
Zach, how you
a
doing?
Hi, Jake.
So yeah, we're just gonna get started. I was just wondering if you were doing the minutes tonight.
I will do them. I'm still looking for someone to take over.
Okay. Awesome. So we can maybe figure that out later.
Sure.
So did everyone get a chance to review the minutes from last meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Cool. So can I get a motion to approve them?
I'll move
I'll
that
make-
we approve the minutes as written.
I'll
Second?
second. Tom,
Any-
seconds.
Any further discussion? Nope. All in favor? All right.
Aye.
Okay, so awesome. Next up, we have Kirk with expanded particle results in the Herring River and existing and restored conditions. Kirk, do you need to screen share or anything? Do you have like a presentation you want to give us?
Yeah, I do. I'll try to do that right now.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me know if I need to make you co-host. Oh no, he did it. Okay, good.
I think I got it.
You
There
did.
it is.
All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Awesome. I can't see you when I'm showing my screen, but so just speak up if you need me to stop or do something. All right. So gonna give you a quick summary of some of the expanded particle tracking results we did within the Herring River. And we're looking at both kind of the existing and restored conditions that are being proposed for that system. I think I've spoken to you guys before, probably looking at sediment transport dynamics in the system, which were based on the hydrodynamic model that we developed. That was probably a year or two ago at this point now. And this kind of looks at a little bit more information. Specifically, we expanded the model to cover most of Wellfleet Harbor. Obviously, way back when, the focus was more on the Herring River and the restoration, but as we stepped forward in this, we expanded that to cover a larger spatial area. Some of the motivation for that was, I don't know if you remember this fun little animation here where we released a sediment particle and then kind of watched it move throughout the system. This was back in kind of 2015 timeframe when we were looking at opening up the Herring River dike, the Chequesset Neck Road dike system. And we watched kind of where that little sediment, that red particle would go within the system. We released it from that little yellow circle right there at High Toss Road, and you could watch it move. And one of the major outcomes of this was this was kind of a follow-up to the actual sediment transport work we did. Was where it actually ended up after 2 or 3 tidal cycles was further upstream than where it started. And that has to do with because the fact that this is a flood dominated tidal system, which I'll circle back to in a second. But part of the concern was that, really the model ended kind of not all the way in Wellfleet Harbor. And there was some thought that, well, we maybe needed to capture more of the dynamics of the entire system. So what you're looking at now is kind of relative existing conditions within the Herring River system with the salt. This is the full hydrodynamic model that you've probably seen before, but there was some concern that this boundary wasn't really capturing the full extent of Wellfleet Harbor, and certainly not the shellfish lease areas that exist there. And although, if you go back to this one, the particle never really gets to the boundary, we wanted to expand that boundary to just see if we were missing something, but also maybe we could learn more about what was happening in the system as a whole. So about a year or two ago now, we expanded the models significantly into Wellfleet Harbor. It also went up into, the main marina area and up into Mayo Creek and some other areas. So now, instead of stopping kind of halfway through the shellfish lease areas, it expands itself throughout the entire harbor area. And again, I'm not going to go through the development of the full hydrodynamic model before, as we've gone through that quite a few times. But this is a really high resolution model. It's, down to about 2 meters or 5 feet resolution throughout almost the entire area. And the reason it's so resolved is because we had to get all the little tidal creeks up in the system identified correctly for the restoration part of the project and the salinity transport part of the project. But it kind of maintains that resolution. Here's just kind of some sample velocity results in kind of that expanded area, just focused on Wellfleet Harbor. So the model could be used for a number of different things. What this is existing conditions. So this is what's out there today in terms of flow dynamics, just normal everyday tides going up and down in the system. Pretty limited flow into Herring River in this, but you can kind of see where velocities go. The higher, the brighter the colors, the faster the velocities. The arrows kind of indicate direction and magnitude of that velocity. And so when you see the reds and oranges, and you can't really see the dike, but if you really zoomed in on that, that would be pretty much all red because of the velocities that go through during the peak flood and peak ebb conditions in the system. And then just as a quick comparison, this is now restored conditions. So what we've done here is opened up Chequesset Neck Road dike to the proposed open span bridge with tidal control systems that you're probably all very familiar with. This particular case is evaluating the phase 1 endpoint of the modeling or of the project. So that would have about 7 of those gates open that are 6 feet wide, about 10 feet high. So not full restoration by any stretch of the imagination, but it's letting a good more water into the system. And so you can see how that kind of changes the circulation. Specifically, the changes are happening at the dike, which is not surprising. And then just to kind of compare the two, what this is just a straight temporal difference. So basically subtracting those two results from each other, where changes in velocity, increases in velocity from existing conditions. So if you have red, that means you're going up in velocity for restored conditions compared to existing conditions. And then the green would be, no change in velocities. And the blue would be a negative, meaning the existing conditions the restored conditions would result in a reduction in velocity. This isn't all that exciting. Not surprising, most of the changes are occurring right in the vicinity of the opened dike region, and specifically more upstream of that dike area, where you're going to see mobilization of potential sediments through this area because you have increased velocities, increased tidal fluxes. But out in Wellfleet Harbor, this restoration doesn't really affect circulation or velocity dynamics in terms of flow. How that relates to sediment is somewhat different, because obviously if you mobilize something here where you didn't mobilize it before, that could still move in and around the system. But this just shows that the restoration of the dike doesn't really affect velocities per se in Wellfleet Harbor. So I mentioned this flood dominance. I think it's a confusing term that gets thrown around. So I just want to explain it real quick and what it means. Most of Cape Cod normal natural estuaries are flood dominant, meaning that tends to drive sediment upstream or into the system rather downstream or out of the system. And that, you should understand, that's on a net basis. That doesn't mean no sediment moves downstream. It also doesn't mean sediment doesn't move in and out of the system. It absolutely does. But overall, on a long-term net basis, more sediment is going to be driven into this estuary than out of the estuary, as long as it's a natural system and not influenced by things like dikes and what's out there now. What does that really mean, flood dominance? Essentially, in very simple means, you have a longer falling tide. So when the water's coming out of the system or ebbing out of the system, it takes longer. And you have a slightly stronger flood current. So it's a shorter, higher velocity flood. Now this figure here is a complete over exaggeration of what that means, but essentially you'd have a very sharp increasing curve in flood, and you'd be able to mobilize sediment through that because your velocities are higher through this whole time frame. And then on the ebb, you have a longer ebb, meaning it takes longer to drain, it lasts a little bit longer, and you have lower velocities, so less sediment gets moved downstream during that ebb conditions. Now, obviously, it's not this drastic, but this is just a representation of the difference. So this research all started, and there's really a lot of information on how you determine that nonlinear relationship between the flood and the ebb, and work done by Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. And it started in Pleasant Bay, really looking at the nature of flood dominance versus ebb dominance, meaning flood, higher water is coming into the system and it takes longer to drain, versus on an ebb dominant system, you have faster water coming out, but longer water coming in. And it varies across the globe, but generally speaking, on Cape Cod and in New England, because of our tidal regime, most systems are flood dominant. Here's another example in India, and just actual measured data where you have that, you can see the steeper incoming tide, so higher velocities coming in, you're getting the same net volume of water in as you are out, except for freshwater discharge, but then the slower curve coming down, so a little less velocity going out of the system. What that looks like in Herring River isn't quite as drastic, but it's certainly there and certainly does exist. And so this dashed line, this is actual measured data from Herring River. Here's the existing kind of inside the system, and you can see how you have a muted system where it's approximately the same. So that flood dominant nature under the existing conditions isn't quite as strong, but as you start to open it up and restore it to more natural conditions, like this green line here, what you start to see is a very sharp faster velocity flood condition and then a slower ebb condition. So on a net basis, what that means when we say it's a flood dominant system, that means you're getting faster water in, you're getting slower water out. The volumetric difference is approximately the same, but that's what we refer to as a flood dominant system. And generally those systems mean you're going to drive sediment up into the system on a net basis versus driving it out. So we took that bigger model that I showed you before, and we essentially looked at it instead of just, you know, an example that we did where we released one particle at High Toss Road. We looked at 7 different locations of initiation, meaning the velocity is able to pick up the sediment and move it. And then we looked at 4 different initiation times. So we basically cheated a little bit and said, okay, we're going to say that the sediment is able to get into the water column even at slack low or slack high. We just really want to see what, if it is in the water column, it is suspended, say it's a finer grain particle, where is that going to go, right? So there's 4 different release times throughout a tidal cycle. So at mid flood, which we call max flood, at slack high water, max ebb or the mid ebb of water coming out of the system, and then slack low. So we released 4 particles at those different locations. Then we released them at these 7 different locations throughout the system. So anywhere from, you know, upper Wellfleet Harbor to all the way upstream of Pole Dyke Road. And then we did that for existing conditions, and then we did it for restored conditions, meaning the phase 1 endpoint of restoration. So that 7 gates open, 10 feet high scenario. So we were able to compare kind of how existing conditions of movement of these particles compared to restored conditions of movements of these particles. We looked at normal conditions only, which would be equivalent to kind of the net overall transport trends. We did not look at or evaluate storm conditions. So of course you can have a specific storm that's going to mobilize sediment and do different things. Generally speaking, if you get a storm surge, that's going to pick up sediment and move it inward, as you can imagine. You get a big storm surge, floods a lot of area, it picks up sediment and moves it up into the system because you have a much stronger dynamic of water movement into the system. But you also could have a potential rain event that might increase the discharge and draw different sediment out of the system during heavy discharge or rain events. Although in this case, with, you know, the significant tidal elevations we have here, it probably isn't moving that much when you have a rainfall event. But we're really just looking at these normal conditions that occur on a net basis, and over the long term, this would be the general trends of that movement. So let me just show you some of those results. So again, those same kind of particle tracks that we were looking at before. This first one is existing conditions released from kind of the Shellfish lease areas or from in Wellfleet Harbor. And you can see where this particle goes. It actually gets stuck on a shoal at low tide here. It's picked back up, moves throughout the system, approaching high tide. If you kind of watch the little red dot on the tidal graph here, now it's going to go back out. And mind you, this tidal simulation, or this tidal graph here is kind of the water level in Wellfleet Harbor. Again, at low tide, it gets stuck on this shoal here, this particular particle. Now it's going to get mobilized again, move throughout the system. So this, under existing conditions, these particles, if they are in fact mobilized from this area, generally tend to live and move and settle in and around the same area that they're really starting. If we look at a restored condition, however, now we're taking that same particle from the same location, released at the same time, which is kind of a max flood condition or during a tidal flood. Now you can see the particles moving around, and it's going up and in, but you'll see during the second tide of the day, which is a little bit higher tide, you have a lower tide and a higher tide each day. Now this particle really can start to mobilize. This one actually gets pulled up into the system.
Wow.
And goes back out. So we're looking at a completely different regime you know, although I showed you before that the velocities don't change that much, which is true, you now have entrainment of the water up into the system. Here you go again. And so now during existing proposed or during restored conditions, that particle is moving a much further distance over time throughout the system. And again, just remember it started at that kind of yellow location. Now it does kind of generally get back to that area, but you'll notice it is upstream of where it started or further upstream. That has to do with that flood dominant nature where you get that faster incoming tide and a little bit slower outgoing tide. Let's move upstream a little bit, and this is taking a look at kind of the dogleg area or so of the system. Now I'm going to show you, because existing conditions is frankly pretty boring in the system, right? Not much movement going on. I'm showing you restored conditions. I'm just going to show you a couple different release times. So this one was released at kind of the low water condition, and you can see where that particle ends up moving around. And now when it gets way up in the system in Upper Herring River, it tends to move a little bit slower. Velocities are slower down there. Right now there, it got stuck in a subsided area. It's coming back up at the high tide. It's picked up. And so it just shows you kind of where these particles go in space and time, and how they move throughout the system under the velocities. There it got back into the main channel, ends up. But again, in this case, you'll notice that particle tends to live and reside and move more upstream of the area where it started than downstream. Well, this one we said, let's release it at a different time and see where that ends up going. And so same release location, but it actually ends up going a little bit different locations because we released it at a different time during the tidal cycle. And so we have all these different results from all these different release locations and release times. And although these animations are fun to look at, it's pretty hard to dissect. I mean, we're not going to spend all night looking at every single one. There you can see it settled down a little bit there, and then it's going back in. I'm going to look at every single one because that really doesn't help us define what actually happened. So these are somewhat busy plots, but I think they do a really good job of kind of summarizing what we're seeing when we look at individual particle movement throughout the system. So just let me explain what some of these graphics are here. So this blue circle is that initial release location, or where that particle was initiated from. So that's where it started. Okay. The green shaded area is kind of where the particles move under existing conditions. So you'll see this at every release location will have this green kind of polygon. That's the maximum extent. What I mean by excursion is kind of the distance that the particle can travel, or the spatial area that the particle moves within. And what this is kind of the maximum area that it moves within if it is mobilized from this blue area. So sediment from this area generally tends to move and or settle under normal conditions in this green area, right? So it generally stays where it starts. That's existing conditions. Everything else on here is for restored conditions. So the blue shaded area is the excursion, where the particle can go, the maximum area that it travels over for restored conditions. And so that's probably the most important thing, because that's the maximum distance that the water under restored conditions, those velocities, those tides can drive these particles, right? So if a particle starts here and it's mobilized at the perfect point of the tidal cycle, it can get up to above high toss road under restored conditions. Notice it doesn't go much further than what existing conditions do, though, if it kind of stays in the harbor. The last thing I'm going to say is tell you about these red dots. And these red dots are basically the 4 particles we released, where they ended up after 2 tidal cycles. So generally speaking, again, if you release something from here, it tends to end up more often than not upstream of where it started. So this one was downstream, so it's not perfect. These are random when it's released, but generally speaking, those particles end up upstream. The last thing are these little pink zones. These are basically what we call landing zones. That's where we see the particles most likely, if they do settle out of suspension, that's where they end up. So under restored conditions, they either get driven all the way up here, and this is a subsided area where the velocities get low, they get stuck in here and they settle out, or they just end up back kind of in the same area where they started and were initialized. So this is one example of this release location or this starting point of where sediment can move and go. And it's the maximum because we're looking at particles that are basically able to move to the full extent of where the water can move. I'd put these numbers up here. We'll come back to these. You don't have to worry about those, but that's basically how far the particle can move under existing conditions and how far it moved under restored conditions.
More than done.
Here's the second location as we go kind of further up the gut or just downstream of the dike. And again, green is existing and blue is restored.
That's where it settles out.
And so here we see again,
Makes sense.
particles down here under restored conditions
Yeah.
are living generally upstream, which to me, having looked at these estuaries over and over across the Cape is not surprising because it's a flood dominant system. And if we get this back to some type of natural system, generally sediment is going to come into this system. It's going to want to come into the system. And that's kind of what this is showing. Here's a location that's just upstream of the dike. So this is right on that shoal that exists, that flood tidal shoal, or the flood tidal delta, that as we call it, that's just upstream of Chequesset Neck Road. And again, the green area is existing conditions. It just doesn't move. It sits on the shoal. It has a hard time getting off. It's there. Under restored, we're opening that up. Obviously, you're going to get more flux, more water. But again, all the
Well, it's
particles
just, I
in
think
this
it's
case
like whatever is
end up
north of the
upstream.
dike.
So
So
the
yeah,
particles
all
end up
that
upstream of that
marshland.
system. If you're not muted, if you don't mind muting, that'd be great.
Thank you.
So, and again, the blue is that tidal excursion or the full extent of excursion. Notice what we're not saying is that particles from in the system don't come out, like they do, right? They come out and they move. The thing is, though, on a net basis, as long as they don't settle out on some shoal, they're going to end up upstream. And then again, this pink area is that most common landing zone. What we see is particles getting up here and getting stuck, settling out because we get shallow subsided areas with lower velocities, and that's where they end up. If we go further upstream, same story here. Again, that maximum excursion, under existing conditions, a pretty muted system, not a lot of tides coming in and out of here. So it doesn't move much. We're moving stuff now, again, generally upstream. Here's one that ended up kind of downstream. So it's not, 100%. They all end up upstream based on when they're released and how they go. But generally where they settle out is, again, upstream. So these particles still kind of are moving around in there. Further up, we're starting to get further up into the system. This is above a high toss road. Again, they tend to settle out in this pink area upstream. But now the tidal excursion is getting to the point where it can't really get up too much further upstream, right? It's going down and up. But again, generally speaking, where these particles are going to go is into this pink location. Here's Upper Pole Dike. This is just upstream of Pole Dike Road. These particles, the velocities are so small, even under restored conditions, they don't even get out of Pole Dike Creek. Pole Dike Creek, if you've ever been up there or tried to go up there with a kayak, it's pretty impossible. It's pretty heavily vegetated. That may change over time, but right now the velocities are so low, the tidal exchange, even under restored conditions, doesn't really move these particles that much. Certainly can't even get them out of the system at all, meaning down by the dike. And then if we go far upstream, this is about at the edge of the tidal excursion as far as tides push up into the system. Now here you'll say, well, wait a minute, you've been saying this whole time that it's a flood dominant system and things get driven upstream. Well, in this case, that's not true. Well, why is that? Well, it can't really go any further upstream. So the tides at this point, this is as far as the tides can go. Up here, it's still going to be generally a freshwater system. So there's only one direction these can go, which is downstream. But again, they don't really settle out in any area other than these kind of pink zones. So they mobilize and they move and they can get downstream of the dike, but they don't actually make it out into Wellfleet Harbor. This is, again, the farthest they can go. And that generally is the case for most of these scenarios of things upstream. You'll notice they don't quite make it to, for example, the Shellfish lease areas. There's not enough mobilization movement to get them that far. So quick summary, and then maybe we'll have a brief time for questions, but this table up here is summarizes kind of those 7 locations that we looked at release, and certainly there could be more, but this is a pretty comprehensive assessment. What I'm presenting here is that excursion, and certainly under restored conditions, you're going to get increased particle transport irrespective of the release location, meaning you're going to get larger movement and larger areas that sediment can mobilize itself over. At this phase 1 endpoint, which represents, in our case, what we're looking at, the greatest tidal restoration and particle transport potential in the phase 1 portion of the project, that's what we're looking at. And under that case, that greatest tidal restoration and particle transport, we didn't see much upstream release locations transported into Wellfleet Harbor. There were 2 locations I showed you that the transport was into Wellfleet Harbor, but they were never transported as far downstream as the Shellfish lease bed areas. And that has to do with that flood domination, that flood dominant system where that velocity goes in. So generally speaking, you're going to see sediment moving upstream. You're going to see sediment moving much further in areas, but it doesn't actually get all the way down into Wellfleet Harbor. Now, certainly under initial restorative conditions, there's going to be some sediment that is so fine that it stays in suspension and can get into Wellfleet Harbor. I have no doubt about that. But under that scenario, it's unlikely that sediment ever settles out. It's so fine, it's like flocculent mud, and will end up going well out into Cape Cod Bay or other areas. So again, as mentioned, particles released upstream of the dike were dominated by excursion and landing points that were upstream. So it's that flood dominant system. Particles released upstream of Full Dike Road stayed in Full Dike Creek. And then, that tidal excursion, or those numbers here, show the kind of that maximum extent that a particle can move within the system. So I'll stop there, and if we have time, Jake, welcome any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think this was one of the biggest concerns for people, and I'm really happy you took the time to come and give this presentation. Does anybody have any questions about this?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Yep.
I was wondering about, in that last set of pictures where you were talking about the sediment was going up, all the way up opposite Duck Harbor, and the pink zone there where it was settling. Is
Yep.
there any indication of what might happen now that there's some more wash through at Duck Harbor and it's going to affect that marsh area? Is that going to change the turbulence, the flow at all?
Yeah, so you're talking about this kind of area here, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I did
So
that wash over.
yeah, so if and when, and you're talking about washover through here, correct?
Yep, right off the beach.
Yeah. Yep. So under present day conditions, without sea level rise, normal conditions are still going to act the way that I'm showing here.
Okay.
During a storm event, right? Even today, if you have a storm event that does produce washover through here, that will energize this. But generally what's going to happen there is sediment from here is probably going to get washed into this area. And so, like I said, these are normal conditions. Under a storm, coastal storm, nor'easter, hurricane, this would look completely different. And that, in a lot of different ways. But generally speaking, if you can imagine higher waters with surge coming in through Wellfleet Harbor, over the gut, over Duck Harbor, into Mayo Creek, all that sediment that gets picked up and mobilized is going to end up in the system.
Okay.
Generally speaking. Does that help answer that question?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. The other thing I'll mention real quick is that I think, one of the things that's really, I think, important in this whole process, and again, I don't know if anybody from the Herring River technical team is here or not. I think Tim might be, is that this is, the adaptive management nature of this means that even if you think this model is complete malarkey for whatever reason, that, there's going to be pretty extensive monitoring. And one of the areas that we're really talking about monitoring is here. So meaning in the Shellfish lease area. So if we start to see through the restoration project, meaning we're not going to open this up all the way day one, I wouldn't suspect that, if things start to change, sediment starts to be different, sedimentation rates start to be different in this area, we're going to be able to model, or measure that to say, hey, something unexpected is kind of happening here. But from what I know about Cape Cod estuaries and the flood dominant nature of it, and this is certainly one of them. And in fact, under current conditions, it's actually a little bit ebb dominant because it's been so muted by the dike and the anthropogenic influences there. Generally, things will be moving upstream here on a net basis.
This is Nancy. I have a question.
Sure.
I wanted to, when you were giving the presentation, I was kind of focused on looking at the common landing zones. And I was kind of looking mostly like, all right, is anything being affected in Wellfleet Harbor? But I wondered if you could just quickly scroll through them again so that I could look at the Herring River area, because, you're talking about the Shellfish Grant area on Egg Island, for example, but one of our most prolific wild shellfishing areas is the Herring River. And it's our predominant summer opening. So I was just wondering if you could quickly scroll through so I could just look at the Herring River on those slides.
Yeah, generally speaking, just through that is, there's this area in mid Herring River and in Duck Harbor is really subsided, meaning it's lower elevation than it would naturally be over time. And that generally tends to be where we see these kind of landing zones show up. This one doesn't, these guys just don't move. So does that help?
Yeah.
I don't know how that
did
relates to your areas.
Did you just go through the 7? I was just looking at I just wanted to quickly look at those 7 slides to see where the pink areas were.
Yeah.
Is that what you just did? It was quick.
That's what I just did. I can do it again. So there's one. This pole dike again doesn't really have, it doesn't move much.
Yeah.
There's kind of
And
another.
it's moving upstream or around. Yeah.
Yep. There. This one goes, it's kind of upstream of this even more. And then there's the last one.
Okay, great.
Thank you. I would say that the lower Herring River, meaning from the dike through High Toss Road under restored conditions, things get, when we watch some of the particles go, they would get hung up at times on certain edges during like a low tide, but they would get mobilized again during the next higher flood condition. The velocities through here are probably the most drastically changed. And so we didn't see a lot of settling or landing zones in this stretch. Once they get up here, they tend to slow down and stop.
Okay, that was really helpful. Thank you, Kirk.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for giving the presentation, and hopefully some of those guys with grants there that were really concerned will take the time to watch this. Nancy, this will be posted on the town website, right?
I don't know. Is there a place that you could post this, or that you could send it to me and I could try and post it? I think it would be best posted on some sort of a Herring River, and then I can send it out with a link.
Yeah, well, you're recording the meeting on your end, right? I just meant you're going to record this meeting, and does it go up so people could watch it after the fact?
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
That's exactly what I'll
just
do.
let
Now I
people
got
know.
it. Mhm.
Awesome. So I think that's it. Is there anything else with the Herring River we had? I think that's it. All right. Well, thank you again, Kirk, and we'll move on to the harbor management plan. John, you had an update on that?
I don't know much of an update. I did send you around to the board earlier I don't know where it's at. If John Reel's still on, maybe he knows. There was a draft harbor management plan that NREB put together. It's for this year. It was being sent to the Board of Selectmen, and I'm just not sure if the select board approved it or not, but it's a draft for the time being. And so I sent that around, and
John,
yes,
our draft report has been sent to the Board of Selectmen. The shellfishing chapter is very much as you have seen it already. The Board of Selectmen haven't approved it because they won't meet again until next week. And I've asked them to be on the agenda, but I haven't had a confirmation.
okay. So, but it's pretty much, it should be, there may have been one or two typos in it, but those, it's pretty much, it should be, we went through it and through it and through it, and it should be fine.
Great.
So that's a draft for the time being until it gets approved by the select board. And I also, because we were talking about a future Curly report, and I don't know if we were aware of this before, but I sent around a proposal that Owen Nichols sent us from the Center for Coastal Studies, and that was about what he could do for us to revisit a Curly report on a recurring basis every 5 years or every 10 years. So along with the cost estimate, and you can read it, it's pretty detailed. And I thought it was a good jumping off point. Don't know if Owen is on, I don't think he is, but I have not heard, I don't know where our next step is with that. But that was an idea that was floated a few months ago.
Great. Thanks, John. Yeah, we'll definitely add that to a future agenda item. Does anybody have any comments about the harbor management plan as of right now? Okay, great. So next, we got plastics in the harbor, a grant update. Tom, did you have any more information on that?
Yeah, Jake. Yeah, thanks. I'll be quick. Last meeting, we reviewed the intern work, Ross and Zeno's work on plastics in the harbor. We focused, go through that whole report. We focused on the single-use zip ties and how some of our grant users were using, bungee balls already to replace the zip ties. And we talked about the grant. There's a $5,000 grant sponsored by Barnstable County for bungee cords. And I was asked to meet with, we needed a sponsor. So I was asked to meet a nonprofit sponsor. So if you remember, I was asked to meet with SPAT, and we had our conversations. We had a couple. I also wanted to include, or we thought we should include, a marketing theme there. They're coming up in a marketing theme for Wellfleet oysters, and do we include environment friendly type of oysters, et cetera. So that kind of got complicated with them, and I wasn't getting a good vibe. Well, they wanted to really go after a larger grant, to be honest with you. Which would have been next year or this year. So after a couple meetings, I get this call from the recycle committee to say, hey, we're really like to get involved in this thing, and looking at the fine print of this grant, we think we can be the owners of this, and we just need your help filling it out. So I said, hey, what the heck? It was the Monday before Christmas. So we basically worked through the holiday, and we got it, we presented it on December 30th. So it's in the Barnstable County. We should hear something in 2 weeks. Now, these are free bungee cords. And what they asked us for a process, what would we do if we got the $5,000? So we basically we said we'd pick 10 grant owners, leaders in the industry, both large, medium, small grants to participate. We'd give them bungee ball cords, and they can use it on their grants and, work with their teams and not do every single bag they have, but 20, 30, 40, depends how many bungee cords we get, and just give us a feeling on whether these will work, would work as you go through your year. We have a calendar of events. At the beginning, we spend our time picking, choosing, selecting people. We have some time, we educate them on why we're doing this. And then we would do interviews on how successful these were in the October, November timeframe, after Oyster Fest. And then we'd have to do a final report to Barnstable County Recycle Committee, town leaders, our board, and of course our community. So we'll basically hear something in 2 weeks. If it happens, that'd be great. There's a lot of other people that put their application in, so keep our fingers crossed. We did get some good vibes from Barnstable County. They were helping us with the grant, telling us what to do, what not to do. So who knows? Anyways, any questions? It was about 10 pages long. It took a lot of creative writing on some people's part.
Well, thank you so much for doing that, Tom. That's
Hey, my
awesome.
pleasure.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Tom. All right. Does anybody have any other comments on this? Okay, so we can keep moving along.
Well, I think we missed the Center for Coastal Studies was
Oh
supposed
yeah,
to be.
I see Mark's on here. I was wondering about that. So we have yeah, we can jump right back to that. So we have something from the Center of Coastal Studies.
Yeah, Tim, I don't know if you want to, or Martha, if you want to start, and I can get into the specifics, or however you want to do it.
Sure, Mark. I'm able to start, and I apologize for not being on earlier. I had some major technical difficulties, but seem to be back online. Thanks, Kirk, for giving your presentation. And really what I wanted to do was I would have liked to introduce Kirk and his presentation, and then also introduce the team from the Center for Coastal Studies, consisting of Mark Borelli, Francesco Perry, Katie Castagno, who is now a recent postdoctoral fellow at Center for Coastal Studies, if we can still use that term, or postdoc, and along with Tim Smith and Steve Spear. And I think just to get things started, well, one, I'd like to say, I'd like the team, particularly with Mark, to just give an introduction to the team and the efforts that they are getting ready to undertake as far as sediment transport in the harbor, long-term study, particularly as a baseline study and as the project progresses. But I'd like to start with Steve Spear from the Natural Resources Conservation Service under the Department of Agriculture, just to give a brief introduction on their role and the significant funding that they have put forward. And everyone knows this should be brief and focused, with the hope that we can come back again with future progress. So I guess thank you, for your attention, and I'd like to introduce Steve Spear and the rest of the team.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Martha. As she noted, we're in the Department of Agriculture, which is, of course, involved in food production, and shell fishermen certainly fit that description. This study that we have decided to fund is a little different role for NRCS. We normally take research that others have done and apply it to the land and water where people are producing food. But occasionally we do get into research, and in this case, we're funding and just being kind of a part of the team. There's a lot of great experts here that are actually going to be doing the work. And we're doing that really because this work will complement what Kirk has done and really give us an idea of what is happening in the harbor now. So we, as Kurt said, can determine if something negative is going to happen on the shellfish beds as the restoration proceeds. So this is so important. And we, respect the work that the shellfish people do, that we decided to put up many hundreds of thousands of dollars, along with some of the other agencies on the technical team to make this happen. The one thing that I would hope would be the case with this study is that it's not just something that the experts do and then we tell you about it afterwards. I think the watermen have such a knowledge of the harbor from long experience that they've got something to offer here to the people doing the studies. So I'd really hope that this would be a collaboration, and that I think Katie and the rest of the team will be very open to what is observed here. So let's work together, and you're going to hear a lot more about this from Mark Borelli, who is next to talk from the Center of Coastal Studies. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. I don't really have much else to say. That was really good. That was a great intro. But what I will say is I'm just going to really quick ask Francesco Perry to wave hello. Francesco is a field engineer extraordinaire. If there's something that needs to be built in the marine environment, Francesco can do it, no matter what it is. So he's a vital member of the team. And Katie, I'm going to ask Katie to say a bit of a hello, because she's going to be sort of the day-to-day face. She's the boots on the ground for this project. I'm sort of the 35,000-foot guy. I'm a coastal geologist at the Center for Coastal Studies. But Katie's going to be the one. She's got experience in Provincetown, in Wellfleet, and she's a very, very good scientist. And we're lucky to have her here for the 3 years. So Katie, just say a quick hello and give just people a quick, your past with the town and things like that.
Yeah, sure thing. So thank you so much. I'm really excited to be starting this position. I just started a couple days ago full time. So I just finished up a postdoc with the Nature Conservancy in Northeastern University, and there I was looking at the utility of nature-based solutions for coastal protection. And then before that, I got my PhD in geological oceanography from the MIT Huey Joint Program. And there I was looking at historic sediment transport from hurricanes and other intense storms on marshes and coastal ponds in Cape Cod and also throughout southeastern New England. And then before that, I got my master's in marine affairs from the University of Rhode Island. And there I was actually looking at the relationships between the shellfishing industry and salt marsh restoration on the Outer Cape, including in Wellfleet. And there I worked the summers there that I was getting my master's. I was working as a day camp counselor at Wellfleet Bay Wildlife Sanctuary. So I'm really excited to be back on the Outer Cape, and I'm really excited to get going on this project.
So the larger project that Steve mentioned, and Katie's going to be the main person for, is the sedimentation monitoring protocol that we're going to set up. So basically, it's a 3-year project. What we want to do is we want to get a much better understanding of the sort of what's actually going on the ground, like the physical processes that are responsible for how the harbor is evolving. Now, folks who spend time out on the flats, you're working out there, you guys already have that sense of what goes on out there. But as scientists, we need to measure it, right? We need to quantify it. We need to get a really good understanding. And so it's going to have a lot of different positive outcomes, and one of which, and any good modeler will tell you, and Kirk is definitely one of those, the more, you can't get enough field data. The more field data they get, the better the model gets, right? And that's what we want. The measurements we're going to make of how the sedimentation occurs in Wellfleet Harbor can't get us into the future, right? We're just going to measure what's actually happening, and we can guess and we can make informed guesses, but the model, that's what one of the things the model does. So the more information we can get to Kirk, the better his model gets, right? But the other thing we need to do with this project is we really need to set up a way where we don't guess, right? We don't wonder what happened during that last storm. We don't wonder what happened during a really, really powerful rain event where all this water is pouring out of Herring River. We're going to measure it, right? We want to know exactly what happens, and we're going to set up a number of different instruments in the harbor. We're thinking about 2 or 3 locations. Some of them are going to be intertidal. So you're going to see some of these. It's going to be sort of very, very small. Typically, be like a 2 or 3 small pipes coming out of the flat, and then maybe an instrument or two, so the size of like a portable travel coffee mug, right? Relatively small, and we're going to measure what the bed is actually doing, right? It's called an altimeter, and it's what a plane uses from the air. But we're going to get it really close to the bed, and we're going to measure what the bed does. And this instrument, it's pretty relatively old technology, believe it or not, but it can measure changes of a millimeter, right? That's the thickness of a penny. And if it changes, if that bed changes to the thickness of a penny, we're going to be able to measure that, right? We're going to see how the water is flowing over that bed, and we're going to see how much suspended sediment is flowing through the water at any given time, and how that bed changes. So we're going to see a relationship between the suspended sediment that Kirk's talking about and the bed changes that we're measuring. We're going to look at waves and tides. We're going to measure all that stuff. We're going to do it at 2 or 3 different locations. So we're going to see changes. And then as this monitoring protocol gets set up and we do more and more, we're going to be able to get that background variability. This is what we typically see with this kind of storm that happens for this long at this high tide. And if it's a spring tide, this is what we can expect. And if it's a neap tide, this is what we can expect. And it's just about amassing all this data for 2 or 3 years to get a good sense of what's happening out there. So when you understand what happens naturally, in quotes, you'll get a better understanding what could happen during extreme events, whether they're natural extreme events, whether there are things like opening up the dike that the Kirk's model will show and stuff like that. So until you get that on the ground data, and that's what we do, right? Until you get that on the ground data, you don't really know what's going on. You have a sense of it, but we want to measure it, and that's what this project is for. And we're going to get really, really state-of-the-art data to use in and of itself, but also understand and inform models. So that's it in a nutshell, and happy to answer. And if Tim, if there's anything else I missed, or if there's any questions, happy to answer. And
anybody have any questions?
Yeah, well, one other thing really quick. Steve mentioned that we want to do this together, and we do want to do this together, right? You're going to see my face at these meetings in the future. You're going to see Katie's face at the meeting. We want to talk to the people who are out there on the flats all the time. Nancy and Katie are going to get to know each other really well, right? We're going to work together, the 3 of us. When Francesco's here and he's setting up all this stuff to begin with, you're going to see a lot of him too. So we want to make sure you guys know the stuff is out there. We want the Oystermen to know that this equipment is ours, it's yours, right? It's a town's, and we want to do this together, right? So we're going to count on them. We want them to count on us to do this job right.
Yeah, we really appreciate that, and we really appreciate the work you guys do and are going to do, and I'm definitely excited for the results. Does anybody have any questions? We got these guys here.
No, but I was just going to say that, I think that I'm encouraged by this, because one of the thoughts that went through my head is like, okay, we all thought that, we were worried about the sediment coming downstream, but also what happens if a bunch of the sediment ends up moving off. And so just the idea of using an altimeter to figure out what's going on precisely, I'm very encouraged to hear that, so that we're going to have a better idea of what types of changes may or may not take place.
It's a really good point, Nancy, because it's not just about the dike. I mean, this is obviously starting because of the dike, and we want to get this ready. There's lots of other stuff going on in the harbor, right? There's lots of other stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on right now in the harbor, right? How's the dredging going to change things? So yeah, I think it's a really good point. It's just going to be background data that can answer a lot of different questions. That's a good point.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Martha?
Hi, I'd just like to make a point. Thanks, Mark and Francesco and Katie. Welcome to Wellfleet and the SAB. And I hope you get to know Nancy a little better on the ground and running things. And also, I would just like to say that, this is a group that hopes to come back to the SAB on a fairly regular basis to let you know more what the exact plan is, how things are going, or to address what your questions are. So this is merely an introduction about what's going on, but we hope that this is the beginning of a more regular, discussion on what's going on. And so you guys know what's going on, and if you have questions, and particularly how we can best engage the community. But like I said, it's the first introduction to the team, but hopefully the team would like to be able to provide the SAB with regular updates.
Great, thanks.
Great,
Mike.
thanks.
Yeah, I think the Shellfish community would really appreciate that, and you know, we can do this again and get the word out, and I'm sure some people will show up with their questions and concerns. Does anybody else have any comments, Damien?
Yeah, quick question, Mark. I'm just curious. Through all these the studying of the sediment transport and relocation, are any of these models going to offer any more information towards water exchange and how the Bay water will be exchanging with Wellfleet Harbor waters?
That's a good question. This particular study won't be, but I know it's tied into water quality is always a part of this, right? Because that's a lot of what we're talking about is water quality. So while this study won't necessarily talk about water quality, the information we find is going to help people better understand water quality going forward. So this one isn't directly related to that, but this study will be used for people who want to look at that question.
Right. So would there be data beyond, I guess, I don't know. I'm just looking for the overlapping data that's collected there.
I mean, that's a good question, and that's actually a really good question, because if I don't have an answer for it, that usually means it's a good question.
So Tim Smith, do you want to address that? Because I think there are ongoing studies addressing water quality specifically. So Tim, is that something?
This is Tim Smith. I work at the Seashore. I'm on the restoration team. I'm not sure if this addresses the question, but we do have another study going on with USGS where they're collecting regular water quality data, basically nitrogen samples of the water going in and going out past the dike. And if you notice that little green, looks like an outhouse on the dike, been there for the past few years.
Yep.
It's not an outhouse. That's been, that's kind of a sampling location. There's some gear in there that sucks water through tubing, and they've calculated very precise moments in the tide cycle going in both directions, basically the maximum velocity flow to pull a sample out. And then they analyze that for nitrogen 2 times a month on the ebb tide and the spring tide. So that's been going on since last summer. It's going to be a while before that's all written up and summarized, but basically it gives us a pretty good idea of the volume of nitrogen, at least going in both directions through the dike in the current conditions.
I'm not a geophysicist, but I'm going to hazard a possible connection here. If we see the movement of sediment, that will help Kirk refine the circulation of the water and what can move in what direction. So I think you might be able to infer the movement of some other constituents in this, but that's an amateur geophysicist speaking here. So I defer to Tim and to Mark and to Katie on that. But it's not an exact match, but I think it's sort of in the basics there.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say.
Great. Well, anybody else have any other questions or comments? No? Well, again, thanks so much, guys, for coming on here and introducing yourselves. We really appreciate it. And we really appreciate you guys wanting to collaborate and work with us through this process. And if you have any concerns or questions or want to come out for a grant tour, definitely reach out to us.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Thanks, Jake, and thanks, Nancy, and everybody on the board for your time. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to further collaborating with you guys and keeping you updated on what's going on. So we really appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you. Okay, great. So I think we got everything now with the Herring River. So we did the plastics with Tom, and we are on to the 2020 annual report. Zach, I think you sent that around.
Indeed.
Oh, there you go. Cool. Did everyone get a chance to look at that? And does anybody have any comments? Tom?
I thought it was good. I thought it was, I think it hit on most of the points, right? Zach, I mean,
Yeah, generally when I do this, I comb back through all of the minutes and try to pick up on the big themes of the year, and then at the bottom there include other issues. So I'm always worried that I missed some little thing. So if anybody had seen anything, I can add it.
Anybody? Well, I think we're good. Yeah, I read through it. I thought it was great. So can I get a motion to approve the annual report?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2020 annual report as written.
Second? Everybody there?
I'll second.
Oh, great. Okay.
So I'm sorry, I did not have a chance to read this before. I'm just sorry about that. But you said that you voted not to increase fees, but I actually have it on the agenda for tonight
So
because of the credit card fees.
right. We're
yeah, no.
2021 now. So
This is 2021, Nancy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so no worries. Yeah, last year
Yeah,
we didn't
I don't know whether I'd put it as a thing because you might change it and that might be confusing. I don't know. It's up to you.
Zach, I'll let you make the call on that.
So it didn't happen in 2020.
Perfect. All right, so we got a motion and we got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Fine.
All opposed? All right, so moving on. Shellfish department update. Nancy?
Okay, so I asked Ginny Parker to come because the first thing that we were going to talk about is the farmers market that has been really successful. So I think everybody kind of knows how this started, and really the Wellfleet Shellfishermen's Association has stepped up to the plate big time, as has Holbrook Oyster and Ryan Curley. So those three are the ones that are really making the event happen. And I'm kind of working on the regulatory side to make sure that we have all, that we're meeting all the requirements from the state. We still don't have DPH approval, and I'm working with Hillary. And and one of the things that we talked about in our debrief yesterday, do we want to really pursue? So right now the market is operating out of the Holbrook truck, basically, because we don't have permission from DPH yet to operate individual trucks or, stands. And so I think, we had 4 different shell fishermen participating yesterday in the debrief, and they do feel like that's something they would like to do in the future, even if it's not immediate, but we should continue to pursue it because it's likely to take a little while to get that kind of approval. It's also going to take time because in order to do that, everyone who wants to sell from their own vehicle will have to be Serve Safe certified like they are for Oysterfest, and they'll have to undergo an allergen awareness, like it's a computer module. So they'll have to come in and go through and take the allergen awareness educational seminar. And once we do that, I think then we will get approval for that. And so that's why right now we're just kind of operating on the model with Holbrook, keeping all the product, and then the shell fishermen who are represented, who are selling, if you will, or they're at the truck helping hand out shellfish most times. But I think I'd like to, really the bulk of the logistical work, and I'd have to say the success of the market is because of all the hard work that Ginny and Ryan have been doing to spread the word, and Zach has been doing and Holbrook has been doing to really, get the Shellfish, do all the appropriate tagging, and then also participating in the marketing and the, the social media and stuff. So I think I'd like, Ginny can lead, and then if Brian and Zach have things that they'd like to add, what we wanted to do is to bring to you and the greater community some of the lessons that we've learned over the past 3 weeks and ideas that we're thinking as a team for how to do it in a way that is starting to make a little bit more sense. Some, requirements, if you will, for participation and ideas to making sure that we're being equitable in who can do it and when. Because it's obviously getting more popular as the event has become more successful. We don't, we know that we're going into the winter months, but we still feel comfortable that we can make good stuff happen. Maybe it needs to be on a smaller scale or whatever, but I think that, we're on to something, and I think with the right promotion and certainly the energizing that we see and feel in our community and beyond has been really inspiring and keeping us going. But I'd like to turn it over now to Ginny and Ryan and Zach.
Perfect. Thank you. I just want to commend Nancy on her hard work in terms of pushing the envelope with the Department of Public Health and the Department of Marine Fisheries to make this a reality. It has been really exciting from that first meeting we had. And I know Jake sat in on it with us. We were brainstorming about, what could be done. And Nancy said, what if we tried to do a farmer's market? And we were like, some people were like, well, I don't know. And then, it just happened. And I think that the excitement between the shell fishermen and the community and the people that are coming are just there. We have people driving from Boston, from repeaters coming from Monument Beach. It's just been really just like a ray of hope for everybody. It's been a fantastic experience. I think that Zach has been tremendous, and we have to applaud Holbrook for their hard work and the time that they've donated, and to do it for such a reasonable cost has been it was a fantastic team effort, and I think everything pretty much has been 100% positive so far. And what we have with the Shellfishermen's Association, what we have been doing is because we decided to have we try to have everything pre-sold. So WSA is acting as the promoter. So basically we are profiling each shellfisherman on our website. If you guys haven't seen it yet, it's wellfleetshellfisherman.org. So all the participants are profiled on the website, and then their individual products that they're selling, whether it's oysters or clams, are highlighted. And then Ryan Curley has been working with me in terms of helping to do marketing and newsletters and so forth. Trying to think. We have been trying to have everything pretty much has been pre-sold. Every market has been completely sold out. Last week we had a couple of leftover, but we had extra product because we had anticipated a large number of people. And I know Ryan has some numbers that he's going to share with you in terms of how many pieces we've sold. I don't think we're going to talk about dollars because of privacy reasons, but we've moved, a fair amount, not huge, but I mean, huge enough knowing that at this time of year, it was really important, and we were able to make a financial impact on some families at a really important time of year too. So anything else, Nancy, you want me to bring up or?
No, I mean, I think I hope people have had a chance to check out the good work that Ginny and the Shellfishermen's Association have done to create these profiles, and really good look on social media too. It's really fun. So I think we're going to expand, I think, some of our marketing efforts, and SPAT has been helping us as well. And one quick thing I forgot to say is that we are going to be beginning a shell recycling program. And oh man, Barbara Brennisel just got off. That's why I wanted to say it, but she had also asked about it, and Ryan brought it up. So we will be recycling all the shells to be used as mulch in the harbor. Anyone who wants to bring them back. Thank you, Jenny.
You're welcome. And
Right,
Cool.
and then I guess I got pointed to say what the what our plans are. And so how people can join is they either have to they either should contact Jenny or me. I guess they can go through Nancy, just we need to know ahead of time. And the first couple of markets, we were letting people join fairly late. Going forward, everybody's going to be locked in earlier. It's just so that on our end, it's a little easier. So we don't have to chase everybody down. Starting next market, we're starting rotations to cycle in some new people. And give them a chance at the market. We're planning to do 2 weeks on for every shell fisherman, so they get a 2-week stretch. That way we turn over only half the market every week, so we don't have to have people learning from scratch without anybody. So that should work out pretty well. The exception with that is if somebody's providing a product that nobody else is, they can stay on basically until somebody else also providing that product wants to join, a chance at the market as well. And in terms of expectations right now, the last 3 markets have been really successful, and the one right before New Year's especially successful. I think going forward, it's going to be smaller for a while, but it'll be at a lower volume than it was at New Year's. I just want people to know that, so that they're not expecting the volume that we had on New Year's if they sign up. But we are going to try to manage that by having fewer sellers at each market to make it worthwhile to the individual sellers. And then we're hoping that it just slowly builds going forward into the winter. And then, as we finally get out into the spring, I'm sure it's gonna get busier as well again. So we'll see how it goes.
Great.
Ryan,
Well,
get a quick
yeah,
question.
go ahead,
Yep.
Damien.
Thank you. I just was curious, as you guys have diversified products, do you find that is beneficial to the market, or is that deterred at all from the local products?
So
the products that are strictly coming from Wellfleet.
So for the last 2 markets, all the product has come strictly from Wellfleet. There is demand for scallops, but we are trying to focus on Wellfleet shellfish. We've been trying to drag in a couple Wellfleet scallopers, but so far our lassos aren't quite tight enough. So, there's definitely people that ask about it, but right now it is just Wellfleet shellfish. And overall, I think that something like 70% of our sales are for oysters, and the 30% is for clams. And the oysters are the ones that really need, a kick. And one of the things that we are focusing on is trying to educate people on how to, eat the product at home, and that you don't necessarily always have to eat an oyster on the half shell. That there's other ways that you can eat an oyster and prepare it at your house and enjoy it. So, like Nancy's been handing out recipes to everybody that comes to try to just, educate people that there are more ways to eat an oyster, So.
Great. Well, thanks, guys. I saw the stuff on social media and the website and heard about it. And yeah, it's awesome. You guys should be really proud of what you're doing. Does anybody else have anything else to say about this? Great. All right, let's move on to the permit fee. Nancy, do you want to?
Yes.
Open
So I think I forwarded around to everybody right afterwards that it's not going to be feasible to, it was a great idea to try and do it by, the type of adding just the 3% on to the type of permit. But Suzanne, she just said, we can't do that. So I just wanted to bring it back. You can say no again, but it would just be a flat $5 increase to cover the credit card fees that we now pay for online sales. And I would say that most of the permits are being sold online, including commercial, which I would not have said until recently. And it's just like, there's a lot of people that are just going online. And of course, the first of the year, right? Everybody needed their permits. So we did a lot of online sales. And we have had a couple of people come through the doors here on Wednesdays from 9 to 12 when Jeannie's here. But overall, this will help us cover that. And it will avoid, it will mean that, the credit card fee gets paid by the user and I don't add it to my budget and then it falls on the taxpayers. So that's why I'm obviously supportive of this. And I've also seen it, like at the end of the year, I went and did some donations to nonprofits, and a lot of nonprofits now say, would you like to cover the credit card fees so that the nonprofit doesn't have to? And it just makes sense. It seems like a small amount, but I leave it to your discretion. I understand that we're in, COVID times. And if you decide, I would bring it to the select board and it would happen immediately, even for 2021 permits, in the future. So if you got yours before it, then you paid $5 less. If you get it after in 2021, you pay $5 more. But that's what I bring to your discussion.
Anybody want to start? I mean, I guess I can. Yeah, I mean, I guess $5 isn't that much. I don't really have a problem with increasing the fee. I mean, I don't know what percent. I mean, would it be like a 1%, 2% increase? I don't even know. I can't think of the math. But I hate to do it because I know a lot of guys are struggling. I don't know. Does anybody have any thoughts on it?
We could have it as of February 1.
So you want to do it this year, even though like a lot of people have already, oh, you mean like, yeah, we could do it just next year. It's $5 added on.
Well, we could start it on February 1st.
After,
We could have that, I could bring it to the select board and say, starting February 1st. And so then it would really be for the commercial permit holders, it would be, in effect, starting December 1st of this year for 2022 permits.
I see. Yeah, Damien?
I mean, I think it's a good idea, especially when I hear that, the recreational sales were through the roof. I mean, you sell 1,000 recreational permits. If you're getting hit for $1.50 every transaction, I can see how that adds up. I don't know what the permit numbers were, but I also saw on the agenda tonight to, looking to boost these sales, so, which is, another topic. But I think it may be a good idea. And I wonder also about looking into if it's feasible, some kind of, a donation button. Since you mentioned the nonprofit, I know it's not a nonprofit, but could there be something like that towards culture or towards whatever,
It's funny that you say that because I have had a couple of people, including last week, we're not there. There's summer owners here. We're not there. We still want to support the industry. Is there a fund to which we can donate? Yeah. And I said, well, let me look into that. I'm sure we have accepted. So we accepted, a grant from the county for our COVID relief. We've accepted multiple grants from SPAT. But I just don't, and maybe it would just go into, both of those are propagation, right? It's not going into any administrative fees, but maybe there is something to be said for that type of I have a meeting on Monday with the new finance director. So maybe I'll ask her if there's some sort of a donation line Helen Miranda Wilson donated $1 million. So I think the town should be able to find something.
I think considering the community, it'd be a really good idea.
Considering what?
The community, it would be a really good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jake, I don't think $5 is an issue.
We tried, yeah.
I think, people understand the fees and all that stuff, and quite honestly, to get something back in the mail, or I think it's and ordering online, I think is probably the right thing to do. And Damien's point on donations, you got to fit that in there, Nancy, somewhere, because I think there's a lot of people, at least a lot of my friends, like how can I help? How can I help the guys and gals out there? And they like the idea of this market, but they're too far away to participate. So they're looking for ways to help everybody out. So
yes,
who
and
knows how you're
when
gonna
this
get it.
first happened, and SPAT was doing the they had started that fund that was the Shellfishermen's Relief Fund. That's where I pushed people at that point. So I do need to circle back with SPAT to see if they're still engaging in running that fund. They certainly spent, I think, $100,000. So I don't know that there's anything left in there, but it will be worth a conversation.
Zach?
Would this fee be just for the online purchases or across the board?
Yeah, that's what Suzanne was saying. She can't have it just for online purchases.
I think you just need to call it a processing fee, then, not a credit card fee.
Yeah.
We wouldn't call it anything. We'd just call it a fee increase.
Administrative fee.
Yeah.
But what are you planning on doing with that? Where does the money get put in a separate place, like in the QuickBooks, or how?
Goes into the Shellfish Fund.
Okay. And how about
And then
donation?
25% of it goes to the general fund, which is what funds our budget.
How about if somebody wanted to donate, like we were just talking about, where does that go?
Then that we'd have to create, probably either use one of the lines that I have where I've deposited grant money, or we'd have to set up a separate donation account. I have a meeting with the new town accountant on, or finance director, I'm not sure what her title is, on Monday. So I'll ask her.
Yeah, okay. The nuts and bolts of that, just figuring out how that could work. It sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
And then Zach, to get to your question again, the bulk of recreational permit sales are done online. There's like a couple of people that don't have, and they'll mail it in, and we've had a handful come in here. But when you talk about like everything last summer, even beach stickers were sold online. So it's like, that's what's going to happen and especially like we haven't even discussed yet with you or the select board. And I think it's probably a little too early, but we should put it in the back of our minds. Are we going to sell seasonal permits this year? And if we are, then that would be another major increase.
So that's the impetus, is that it's so much traffic online.
Yeah, I mean, it's a significant dollar amount that I did not budget, and Suzanne has covered for me, but I can't ask her to cover for the Shellfish department,
I think that's reasonable and smart to increase it. What about only increasing the recreational? Are the bulk of the commercials come in person?
No, they've been coming in online too, not the bulk. I don't know if I could figure out how many are online and how many.
Right.
I don't think
I'm just trying to think of ways that for people who are having hardship right now in the fishing community can avoid a $5 increase.
Well, that's why I was saying February 1, because the last date for commercial permits for this year is January 31st.
Yeah, I think I would support that.
Yeah, I think that's good too. So we make the increase $5 for next year. Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, I hate to increase the fees without like the people who pick in the wild.
Well, let's ask Rocky.
What do you think?
I honestly think it's a really good idea. It gets a little more money into the fund, helps everything run a little better. I think I don't mind paying the extra $5. That doesn't really affect me none, to be honest with you.
Sounds good. Yeah, so I think yeah, the $5 for the commercial guys for next year, we can increase it. Does anybody want to make a motion for that?
I'll make a motion to increase permit fees beginning February 1st, $5 across the board.
Great. Any second?
I'll second it, Jake.
Any further discussion? Nope. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I guess nobody. All right. Awesome. So that's
Okay,
that. And we move on to the last thing. Review tax insert promoting sale of recreational shellfish permits.
So this would go out with the May tax billing, which means it would go to homeowners, property owners here in Wellfleet. And a property owner is entitled to an annual permit at $60, a senior permit at 20, and a seasonal if we sell them. Oh, geez, okay, so that just, I have it in there as seasonal, but I'm not sure that we're gonna do it. So I think I would take the seasonal out, which is $40. And then if we end up selling them, then fine, people can make that choice when they go online to get it. But I feel like until we know what's going on with COVID, the whole reason that we did it was for the crowding at Indian Neck, and it was crowded at Indian Neck last summer, even with no seasonal permits. So I guess I'd like to feel confident that with the vaccines coming down the road, we might be at a better spot by June 1, but I think we should think about this, and it's not on the agenda, so we can't really talk about it tonight, but maybe we should think about this, like in March, and then bring it to the select board so that we're ready to go. And I would take that out of the rec permit. I would just take the seasonal out and just talk about annual permits.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Anybody have any comments?
Damien, were you saying something?
Yeah, I just, I hate to be discouraging people to go shellfishing, but it just sounded like the staff was a little bit overwhelmed and that you weren't supported in adding the staff. So I don't know about broadcasting and reaching out and what's the word? Looking for more involvement, actively looking for more involvement.
That's a really good point.
I would be like, yeah, we should definitely actively look for more participation, I don't know about the timing on that.
It's a good point. And it's like, I'm being driven right now by deadlines. So that's why this is on the agenda now. It's like printing deadlines.
Right.
But maybe what I could do is, I think I still have to get it, but it's February or March 1. I'll look it up in a second. But, in my budget this year, which I think that you guys did not approve a full-time, but did you approve the part-time, $8,000 part-time seasonal person? And that's what I've put back in the budget because the select board approved it, the finance committee approved it. I think you approved it. I don't remember whether maybe we didn't get back there or not, but at any rate, in my fiscal year 22 budget, I do have an $8,000 part-time seasonal person that would then help us. And when I met with the town administrator and the assistant town administrator, they felt that was warranted and it shouldn't be an issue.
Great. Thanks, Nancy. Do you have anything else?
Let me just bear with me. I'm going to look at my computer for a sec.
Great.
I just want to see when the deadline is for me to get this to Karen. Spring tax inserts are due on February 1st. So I think that's why I brought it, because probably we won't meet before February 1st.
Oh, did you want a recommendation or a vote on that?
Yeah, I mean, if we do, this is the thing, right? If we, maybe what we could do for the next meeting is look at my budget in February. You guys could look over my budget, and if you decide, I don't know, it's backwards, right? Because the budget should come first, and then if you guys approved of the $8,000 part-time, then it'd be a no-brainer to add this. But unfortunately, you know, the budgets are.
Yeah, hey
I
Nancy.
think I've only done my, I asked for an additional truck, and that's the meeting I have with the finance committee. They approved that. And I believe the select board has, I'm not sure. But you know, everything kind of got out of whack. So this is not, you know, I'm asking you to approve something before you've seen my budget. So why don't we do that next month? And it's up to you whether you want to recommend this or not.
Perfect.
Hey,
Yeah.
Nancy.
Oh,
Hey,
sorry. Go
hey,
ahead, Tom.
I'm sorry, Jake. I don't see Ryan on here, but do they give you the finance committee give you any direction on your budget?
Well, I mean, you work from last year's budget. And,
Yeah, but
you know, I
they
turned
don't-
my budget in on November 1st.
They
but then-
don't, no, they don't say, we need to cut 5% and we need to grow we got leverage to grow 5%. They don't give you any direction that way?
But we did not get any direction. No, they don't give direction. Nope. Not that
I
I've
mean-
been here. I've only been here 3 years, so.
No, that's plenty of time. I'm surprised that they don't give you direction before you come talk to us.
Well, there's the direction is the select board budget policy. So you're supposed to read through the select board budget policy and then do your budget accordingly.
Interesting, okay.
And that's on the town website, I'm pretty sure.
So sorry, Nancy, I'm just getting a little tired and spaced out. So you're talking about review the tax insert. So do we make a motion, or are you just something that you can ask the town? I mean, that sounds like if you want to put a little thing in there with the taxes that promotes somebody buying a recreational shellfish, that seems like a no-brainer for us. Is that something that you'd want us to make a motion on and recommend?
I think so, because then I can take it to the select board and they usually ask me what you guys say anyway.
Cool. Yeah. So I'll make a motion to recommend that you put a tax insert promoting the sale of recreational shellfish. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, Nancy. I think that wraps it up. And thank you for putting together the meeting. We appreciate it. Do we want to pick a new date? Next date? I have a baby coming in the next week. So I'm not sure if I'll be at the next meeting, but you guys can make it whenever you would like, and somebody else can chair if something's important, unless you want to make it like at the end of February. I mean, I most likely can make it, but just throwing it out there.
Exciting.
Very, yeah. So if we want to go on the same week, February, let's get this tide chart going on. Do we want to do the first week of February or the second? I mean, the tides are actually the second week. The tides kind of get later. I don't know what the weather will be, but do we want to do like Wednesday the 3rd, or do we want to push it back a little bit? Does anybody have any opinion on it?
I mean, if you did Wednesday the 3rd, then maybe I could present my budget to you.
Okay, so why don't we schedule that? And great, that's it. Does anybody have any objections to that meeting time? Date 6:30 again.
On the 3rd?
All right, thanks guys. 8:09, we're done.
Thanks, Jake.
Thanks.
Thank you.
No, no
Take
problem.
care.
Yeah, you too,
Appreciate
guys.
it.
Oh yeah, Nancy, I'm just seeing your message now. Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize when Kirk got into the sediment, I thought it was like one thing, and then I was like,
Me
looking at Mark,
too.
and then I was
very
looking at Mark
confused
there, and I
about.
was like, but I probably next time I'll just turn it over to Martha at the beginning.
You know
She
what,
couldn't get
though?
on.
Hey, Jake and Nancy, when I put the agenda together, it kind of changes when my format for some reason doesn't work when it gets to the town. And I had it separated, but when it got to the town, it looked like it all kind of flowed together. So I'll talk
I think
to
email does that. I think
yeah.
email does that.
It's fine. It all worked out, and everyone did their
Yeah.
thing. The stuff we did in between was so quick anyway. So awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, guys.
All right.
All
Thanks,
right.
everybody. See you
See ya.
soon.
Bye.
Bye, Lucas. Bye, Sophie.
Bye.
Sophie.